Hi, I'm Dr. Gemma, and welcome back to Cognitive, the Knitting Psychology podcast. Cheerfully and somewhat irregularly in business since 2008. Segments today may include what's on my hooks, needles, and spindles, a strategy, something I really like, put a lid on it, oh shoot, and blather. So sit back, put your feet up, pick up your knitting, crocheting, spinning, weaving, or dyeing, or any other yarny thing you're doing, and get ready to enjoy. Well, hello there. Welcome back to Cognitive. This is episode 129 of the newer series, and I am your good-natured but somewhat phony host, Gemma. I say that because our ever-loving Tiny Shiny Things and I think Amy Storm both commented on my seemingly perpetual good cheer on the podcast. That's really nice because I know I've whinged and complained in some episodes, so I really appreciate that. But I am having a good time out here. Also, you do have to be real that our on-the-air personas are not our full persona, so you're only getting a part of me. If I was whinging as much here as I do in everyday life, you guys probably wouldn't even listen. And I wouldn't blame you either. At any rate, here we are at episode 129, and your comments are always welcome. Please feel free to post a comment on the blog at cognitivepodcast.blogspot.com or on our group on Ravelry. If you look at this week's show notes, you will see me modeling a finished flannel skirt. So we will be talking about some exciting things like that this week. But I show in process pictures of the skirt. In fact, I show the model on the package. And that's all. And then that skirt. So you should know that goes with Simplicity Skirt 8605 listed below. But I was so proud of that skirt that I had to stick it right up at the top of the show notes. So there I am wearing it with my most recent vestuary. And I look a little tanky in that picture. That particular vest does. It's not as form-fitting. After I did the washing and blocking, the ribbing lost a bit of its elasticity. And I honestly am wondering if there's alpaca or something in that yarn that makes it have less memory. But there I am in my new skirt, which I love, and will be wearing tomorrow to work. So that reminds me to tell you, it is 8:45 p.m. here on May 8th, 2023, as I record this. In the warm thanks department, well, obviously, Tiny Shiny Things, who gave me that sweet comment about being a nice person, and I only hope I'm half as nice as some of you seem to think I am. And of course, Amy Storm, who's got fabric with sea otters, of which I am fantastically jealous. But I wanted to tell you, Amy, that the turtle skirt is now in progress. I'll talk about that a little later. Readera, you know who you are. We love you too. And I am sending you warm hugs in your time of loss. And I'm really grateful to have you along for the ride. C. Connie Gale and Sal Pal are over on the forum, and they're talking about the joy of snow. If this didn't tell you they're Canadian, what would? Huh? Yeah, we love our neighbors to the north, but at moments like this, I'm not sure I understand them. There are moments where I like snow, when it's on the mountains, in the distance, a few thousand feet above me. Yeah, that's when I like it. Blue-haired hiker is out there living the dream. She passed through a really cool hostel in North Carolina owned by Chica and Sunsets. And so I was surprised because she posted that how well they treated her. But I was surprised because it had their site, which I went to visit to see where she was, had this very accessible list of things you can donate to help them on their way in their hostel. They seem to be quasi-retired long-distance hikers. I myself have been one, although not on the scale of the Pacific Crest Trail or the Appalachian Trail. I have hiked the Cotswold Way in Great Britain from end to end many years ago, 30 years ago, and it was wonderful. But I have to tell you, I think I logged at most about 120 miles between hiking on and off the trail to get to bed and breakfast. Our friend Blue-Haired Hiker, she's out there in a tent at night, although she has done a few shelters and 1 or 2 hostel type accommodations. I don't think I ever see myself doing anything as optimistic as the 2 long American trails. And so it's really exciting to watch her posting as she goes northbound. And boy, weather, yeah, she's had some cold weather. But anyway, Jessica, we're all rooting for you over here at Cognitive. So, what is on my hooks and needles? Yeah, well, some things are also on my beautiful White sewing machine. That's the brand name White. I don't think they're made anymore. I got this one over 30 years ago, and it has been a trusty friend ever since. And you may remember I was going around looking for newer patterns that matched my half-circle skirt patterns from the 90s and not finding them. But I did get the Simplicity pattern 8605. And there you can see a lovely picture of the skirt as it could look. I was doing the long version of the skirt. I did not bother belting it because I don't care. It's got an elastic waist and I don't care. At any rate, I finished it. You can see the finished version on me in the uppermost picture on this week's show notes. This has been an extremely satisfying piece of project. I have to tell you that I haven't sewn a skirt in 30 years. It's like riding a bike. I had no problem at all remembering what I was doing. I improvised in a few places to improve on what was there, did some better seaming, things like that, closed my seams instead of leaving them rough. You know, the things you do when you kind of know what you're doing. And I really had a lot of fun with this, and it came out just great. This was on flannel that was on sale at Joann's. I believe it is still as of today, but I don't know how much longer it will be. But it was, I can't remember if it was 30 or 40% off when I bought it, and I think it was 40% off, and that's never going to be bad. So I will have 3 of these when I'm done. But anyway, I finished the first one. Now I thought, I'm going to do this like I did in the good old days. In the good old days, I would buy the fabric one day and throw it in the washer. And the next day, I would iron it. And the next day, I would cut out the pattern on paper. And then the next day, I would pin it to the fabric and cut it out. And at that point, I usually stacked 2 pieces of fabric, each folded, selvage on top of selvage. And that way, I would pin through 2 pieces of fabric and the pattern. So in other words, I was cutting out 2 at a time. This time I did not, because I wanted to give myself a chance to take it easy and relearn the basics. I didn't need to, as it turned out, but that was great. So I only cut out the first skirt, and that was the constellation on the purple background. It's really pretty. So I did that, and I thought, all right. And then, normally after I got through all that, I would take one day and sew it all together. Well, this time I bought and washed and ironed the fabric one night, and then I cut it all out and sewed it in one day. That it went so quickly. I was really surprised, and it's embarrassingly easy. It's really only 4 pattern pieces if you count the elastic guide, which is a long rectangle you cut out just to find out how long your elastic should be. They could have just given me a number in inches, but hey. Okay, but apart from that, it's a pocket, a skirt piece, and a waistband casing piece. And obviously you cut 2 of the skirt pieces, 2 of the waistband pieces for the pockets, but I didn't bother because I never do 2 pockets. I always just do a right-hand pocket when I do Simplicity skirts because they make such big pockets, and it's just easier and faster to do it that way. So that went so quickly that I determined this weekend I was going to take my other 2 big hunks of flannel and cut those out. And I did that this evening, so you can see them listed below in the unfinished section. In fact, I believe you can see a picture of them in pieces lying across the top of my ironing board. Yes, there it is. With a doggy donut toy on the floor. I even cut the elastic. I mean, really, I just need to whisk these guys through the machine. It will be very quick and easy, which makes me very, very happy. last week I was telling you about the trims that I used on my beautiful lace eyelet petticoats. Believe it or not, I found one of them in the bottom of my big sewing box. I have a huge amount of it left. So I'm debating who is the lucky skirt that's going to get that trim added to it. But I may have to go back to Joann's first and hunt up eyelet. This also made me go to Joann's and hunt up their trims to see what they have in this particular store. It's pretty hidden away compared to how it used to be in the good old days, but they have a pretty good selection back there, so I look forward to more exploration of that. What I could not find was cotton eyelet fabric, just a lightweight, thin cotton. I think the trick there would be to look back in the muslins, assuming they have those, but I will look. At any rate, I didn't see any this time around. So there we have it, one finished Simplicity 8605 and two more to come. On the Spring Frankies, I actually finished the first sock, and there is a picture of it, and it's quite attractive in its own sweet way. And the happy news is the second sock, I'm closing the toe even as we speak, and then onto the heel. So I am almost finished the second sock of the Spring Frankies, which also brings up the Blueberry Who socks. I am starting the heel on the first Blueberry Who. I have actually, these are the TARDIS colorway from C. Jane Knit in the blueberry sock pattern. So now they're the Who berries. And I'm actually onto the heel there. I'm just picking out the stitching even as we speak. So that's going crashingly well. Meanwhile, among the finished is a new project. Now, you've noticed in the last few weeks I've been excited about chatelaines. But the problem is I can't quite get exactly what I want. So I've been haunting the jewelry sections of Michael's and Joann's, looking at chain work type of pieces. And I just collected a whole bunch of them, partly because both the chatelaines, the necklace and the belt chatelaine that I have generous amounts of chaining and extra chain and whatnot on them. So I decided I would shorten some of those, adapt some of those. So I ended up buying some side cutters and some pliers. And then I said, well, I should buy a little extra chain. You never know. Maybe I could set up a few pieces of equipment with chains on them and I can switch them out and blah, blah, blah. Well, you know where this is going, right? I went home and I said, I have enough gear here to make my own chatelaines. And I thought, well, I don't need to because I've got these super duper ones. But the necklace chatelaine, as beautiful as it is, the chain is too long. And also it's a complex, expensive looking chain, whereas the chain I bought is very straightforward and simple and inexpensive. And so I looked at that complex chain and said, I don't want to cut it, but I also cannot get the chain out from the chatelaine because the ends of the chain are bigger than the loops on the chatelaine. So they're kind of permanently welded together until I get the nerve to cut it and then crimp the end. And I would do all that if I knew how, but I'm not sure I know yet. So I'm looking at all this stuff, and this morning I was getting ready to go out for the day after I brought Captain home from the vet. And I said, why? Why with all this stuff do I not have a simple chatelaine that will hold the two things I want the most? A pair of folding scissors so I don't stab myself with the ends, and a needle holder. Now I do have two very pretty silver needle holders. They are both attached to my professionally made chatelaines. And I was sitting there looking at one from Clover. It's every time you buy the bent-nosed embroidery needles to use to weave in your ends and knitting, if you buy them from Clover, they come with this kind of unpleasantly yellow, ugly-looking needle holder, but it does have a little key ring attachment ring on its outer edge of its lid. You can see where this is going. I made my own, and it would be unfair to say I like it. I love it. It is what I wanted from a chatelaine with a little extra. So you can see a picture of me wearing, finally, the necklace chatelaine of my dreams. It is the right length. Now in that picture it's not. In that picture it's actually too long, because initially I put it over my head. And then I said, now I have the same problem I've always had. This thing is too long, except it's on a cheap chain instead of the one I bought on Etsy on the more expensive chain. And I looked at it and I said, why am I fussing with this? And I pulled out Mr. Clippers and off we went. So let me tell you about the new chatelaine. I have no idea how long the necklace is, but it will not go over my head. And that was the thing. When it goes over my head, it gets caught in my long hair. And it's kind of a messy thing when it gets tangled in my clothes or in my other necklaces or other chatelaines I'm wearing or in my hair. So I thought, if this were ideal, it would be a short chain and it would have a clasp, but clasps at the back of the neck. First of all, ring clasps, where it's a ring and you slide the little piece on the top. Those things are just clumsy and awkward. So I went for a lobster clasp, which I had plenty of. And then I said, but I don't like it if I put it in the back, because then I'm reaching behind my neck blindly to clasp and open and close it. So I thought, where I really want the lobster clasp? I want it right down at the bottom where I'm looking down at it to open and close it. And that means, too, when I open the necklace, when I open the clasp and unattach the ends, it will slip right around my neck without going over my head or through my hair in any way and fall into my other hand. And so I moved the lobster clasp. Instead of putting it in the center back where it's hidden because apparently it's ugly, if you look at the picture on the left or the first picture, you will see there is a little earring connector there, a cross piece, and at the top of it, on the right of the picture, you will see the lobster clasp. You cannot believe how convenient that is. So now I have a shorter chain that does not go over my head, but opens and closes at that lobster clasp, where I can see it below my chin very conveniently. The rest of it is extremely easy. That I bought a roll of chain, and that's where the chain comes from. And then the cross piece there, which has all the other chains hanging from it, is actually an earring connector that you're supposed to make an earring, a chandelier type earring with it. But I looked at my chatelaines and said, you need some kind of piece like that you can hang the chains on that hold your tools. So I could not find the kind of pieces in the chatelaines I bought on Etsy. So I settled for this. And I thought, well, I don't know. Then I thought, well, there's too many holes on it. There's, at least 7 little loops that you can hang pieces of your chandelier earrings off of. Rather than get into beading, I was in the aisle where all the little jewelry pieces were, and they had little tiny charms. So I bought a few packages of little tiny charms. So in the middle of that cross piece, you will see a little pink tassel, really little, a little red tassel, and in the middle of that, a little heart with some curly Q engraving on it. And then on the outer 2 holes, I hung chains, and from the chains, I hung very big clasps. They're technically lobster clasps, but they're more decorated than that. I was kind of disgusted when I bought them. I thought, these are too big. I want little tiny clasps like I have on my 2 chatelaines from Etsy. No, I was wrong. I bought these big things unhappy with myself. Guess what? They were a great buy because they went beautifully through the loop of my pair of folding scissors, and they also fit through the little keyring attachment on my little needle case. So what do I have? Around my neck, I have a necklace at a really good length that I do not sit on or get tangled between my legs because it's short. It's not that long like my other Etsy-made chatelaine is, my other necklace chatelaine. I have the 2 tools I want most for knitting. What you can't see is I then went and got some safety pin shaped stitch markers, and I hung those from the chain that I actually just clasped them around the chain, and I can unclasp them and use them to mark stitches as I go or to save my place in crocheting. So right now, I cannot tell you I am happier than a pig in swill with this new chatelaine I made myself. The cost Not too bad. Now, the folding scissors I probably bought years ago at some knitting store, and I'm sure they were $4 or $5. The bent needles and their holder came from Clover, or probably from a Joann's store, who knows how many years ago. So those I already owned. For all the chain materials, well, the problem is I bought them in sets. So the charms were one set, the two big clasps that are holding my tools were one set, the jump rings were a set, the lobster clasps, and the chandelier earring cross pieces. So what did this one cost me? Let me think. Probably about 11 or 12 bucks to make this. However, now I have all the pieces from the sets. I could make quite a few more of these. So overall, if I made as many as I could make, probably considerably less. That's a good thing because I've been toying with opening an Etsy shop, and guess what I'll be putting on it? Yep, these chatelaines. If I ever open the Etsy store, and I have got a book on that, and I will hopefully review that later on another episode. But there it is, my homemade chatelaine. Now, the ones I bought on Etsy did not come with tools. The necklace from Raspberry Studios was, I believe, I want to say it was like $31. The pewter waist chatelaine with the chains attached but no tools, that I think was $45. Okay, so yes, I saved money, so to speak, by making my own. And I think the more you make of these, the more you disperse the net cost of that first one. So I'm thinking about making a few of these and putting them on the Etsy store. And if you're interested in one, let me know, because I can't imagine I'm going to be charging $30 for them. It's not nearly that good looking. But yes, it was fun to hang the little charms on them. I didn't need to, and if I need those center attachment loops, I will take the charms off and hang more chains on this thing. But this has been a really happy experiment. I wore it all afternoon, inside and outside of my tunic, and boy, was I happy with it. Let's see what else I've missed. Well, the stash toss, 4 skeins in versus 33 out, so that's gone well. And you can also see, one of the Blueberry Hoo socks, the first one. As I said, I'm further along on it now, and you can also see my progress on the Dizzy Woodlands Country Cotton Shawl. I've gotten a lot of positive comments on this, and yes, the colors are insanely beautiful. I don't know why it's got the beautiful sheen. I thought this was a pure wool. It is a sock weight. It's probably got nylon in it, though. And this is from Dizzy Blonde Studios. The color is Slippery Slope. I believe she still stocks the color. Yeah, I'm really toying with ordering a sweater's worth in DK from her. And let's see, scrolling down, we got the Lane Splitter, no love on that. The Don't Know Yet, we are stalled here on row 17. It's almost completely attached, and I just need to circle back to it. But as you can tell, I'm getting distracted by everything else. So obviously, no love to the Pennsylvania Dutch Embroidery or to the Lady Eleanor, but we'll get there. No new spinning this week, and no changes in my favorite resources. I am going to hop down to the strategy because I had an interesting week. Now, I've been working on mindfulness and the Buddhist Japanese concepts that go with it. And this week I had an interesting experience. I got a little sick one night, a little acid reflux kicked up. And my acid reflux has been a little atypical because I don't tend to get it in the normal way I used to. I used to get it if I ate too close to bedtime. Now I just get it from stuff in the middle of the day. And the other thing is, while none of the cures for acid reflux have worked, I have discovered that a heating pad set very high on the space on my ribs just below the center of my chest that's hurting helps the most. So I've been doing some research. Turns out one of the reasons people get acid reflux is because they don't have enough stomach acid as opposed to having too much, which is the typical cause. So I'm looking into other home remedies, including betaine HCl and apple cider vinegar, which I've always been too scared to swallow when I'm in the midst of an attack, but apparently it is a good organic solution. However, what happened this week, I woke up the next morning and I said, I just need a reset. And I realized I can't remember when I last fasted. And I also knew my husband was going to make a really special dinner that night. So I said, I'll go for 24 hours of fasting because I hadn't eaten since the previous night. And so I did. I drank herbal tea with no sweetener and water all day. And at dinner, I really enjoyed the dinner. In the beginning of the day, I was a little acidic and uncomfortable. And as the day went on, I wasn't hungry, but my gut settled. What I did notice was my bad habit of trying to eat when I'm bored. So that was a good reminder. I thought I was over that, but apparently I'm not. So I did a day of fasting. And my idea of fasting involves drinking water, trying not to sweeten anything, even though I don't use sugar anyway. I use Swerve or stevia. But I didn't want to add that. I basically didn't want digestion of a solid in my stomach. And I tried to keep it as bland as I could. Like I said, it was fine. I really didn't notice it, to be honest, except I felt so much better that night when I ate dinner that it really was obvious I had emptied, and I felt much, much better to let my gut relax and not work that hard. So what does this have to do with mindfulness? Well, I think anybody who fasts for spiritual reasons could tell you that right away. Because at last count, the Catholics are fasting during Lent, the Jews are fasting for Yom Kippur, and they're doing it hardcore. They don't even drink water, which I don't quite agree with. I think that's a little unsafe, but I'm not going to mess with thousands of years of Judaism. I just find that a little too scary. But I admire what they're doing. You want to talk about mindful. If you're thirsty, you'll be mindful, all right. And then, of course, there's Muslims who are fasting during Ramadan. And I apologize to people in other groups if I'm not aware of your fasting season as I should be. The important thing here is this is such a spiritual thing that all the major religions are using it in some form. And I think it's good because it opens your mind to a lot of things. Now, I think in many situations related to religious faith, it's about identifying with the poor and the hungry, which is a very good thing to do because I think the problem with not just wealth, but even having enough is that you forget that many people don't. So it's impossible to avoid thinking of people who are always hungry when you do the occasional fasting experience. And I find afterwards I'm always looking at homeless people and I'm always working a little harder on that cause. And that makes me very happy that I want to stay aware to human need in the world because by the standards of much of the world, I'm highly privileged because I have a solid roof over my head, enough clothing, and enough food. So I think for that alone, the consciousness of who you are and where you fall in the various tiers of the human economy, these things all come to mind when you fast. On a more local level, there was the reset. I just felt better after 24 hours of it. I was surprised that even only 24 hours, I felt really great after I did it, and I really was conscious of how I enjoyed my husband's cooking that night. It was just delicious. Also, on that local level, you're letting your gut rest. You're just letting it empty and rest. I don't want to argue how much it empties. Different foods digest at different speeds, but I've always found it's a good thing to just let my peristalsis slow down or stop for a day or two, and that you feel very refreshed and reset. I always sleep really well when I'm fasting, and I slept very well the night between my start and my stop. And that felt really nice. That went very well. And I felt really great the following night when I had started eating again. So that little bump in the road helps. I also think when you fast, you become much more mindful of your own eating and your own eating habits, including the things that are just your personal mythology and are not real at all, and that you could probably do without. For example, people say to me all the time, oh, you're keto, I could never live without X. Sure you can. I think mine was pasta. I thought, how could I get through life without pasta? Well, it turns out I'm just fine. I haven't had it in 5 years, and I can't actually remember missing it. I tried rice again when my friend Maxine was down here. It tasted like paste. So do corn chips, taco chips, which I used to adore. That these things just lose their appeal, their filler. And if you can eat them and you're vegetarian or vegan, more power to you, but I can't. That I have a carbohydrate addiction, and like an alcoholic with one drink, can't be done. I'll fall right back off the wagon there. So the fasting, though, made me realize that I fantasize about food much more than I need to, that I have this sense something's going wrong, I should eat something. So if I'm nervous or I'm anxious, I immediately find myself standing in front of the fridge. The other thing it teaches you is how much time you put into food prep and eating, that suddenly on a day without those things, I had this enormous amount of time. In fact, I actually sewed a skirt, if I remember correctly. So if you want to practice some real-time mindfulness on various levels, I really would recommend you try fasting. Now, the medical world in the U.S. is beginning to awaken to the idea of fasting. You see it mentioned a lot in the news, and now, while most American doctors are afraid of low-carb diets, in the long run, when they want to help you lose weight, they will say fast intermittently, and then they will put you on their version of a healthy diet. Some of them say vegan, some of them say vegetable-based, some of them will say low-carb, but on a limited trial basis, whatever. So intermittent fasting is slowly making its way into the health community, I think because we do know that there's a doc, Jason Fung, MD, up in Toronto, who's been having really good results with diabetics who do occasional intermittent fasting. In my case, I would say fasting for 24 hours once a week is an easy, pleasant thing to do to just help your body out. By the way, how do you fast? There's so many different ways you can do it. I was listening to one medical doctor, Dr. Boz, I think her name is, up in South Dakota. She likes to fast with sardines, that she'll eat nothing but sardines. By the way, they're great for you, and I do love them. A little bit of balsamic vinegar mashed up, a touch of salt, must say, very good. I mean, there's a million ways to fast. My preferred ways, I actually do better on just water. I've tried things like you can have tea and coffee with sweetener and cream, or you can have cream and blah, blah. No. Actually, I feel better when I skip all of that. You'd think cream wouldn't set you off too much. It's not a solid, but it does. My body does treat it as though I'm eating. So it sounds really scary to go, what? Only water, Gemma? No, I will use unsweetened tea without cream or anything. I don't drink coffee. I've slowly just lost interest in it. I will drink it occasionally, but I think I last had a cup about a week and a half ago. And really, I like herbal tea, and I like sparkling water, and I like regular water, and hot or cold on the tea, and I get through just fine that way. The other thing is I will let myself have bone broth. I didn't have any on this fasting day, but bone broth makes you feel phenomenal. It's very, very good for you, and I've talked in other episodes how to make it. When you're going to fast, the easiest way is start the night before. Eat your dinner. And then when you're done dinner, that's where your fast begins. Why is that so easy? Well, don't eat anything before bed. You probably didn't anyway. And you get up the next morning, and you've already been fasting about 12 hours. No big deal. So you just go till dinner time. It's not that hard. Now, if you eat carbs routinely, I used to fast a lot when I was still a carb animal. Back in my 40s when I was running and marathoning, I did long fasts. I did juice fasts because we thought they were healthy. No, they're not. Solid sugar. But actually, they still can make you feel pretty good, I have to admit. That I would do these month-long fasts with juice, and I really was favoring tomato juice, which is very acidic. Not very good in that respect, but not sugary, which is great. At any rate, the idea is I would do liquid fasting. So, yeah, ice cream. All right, but in even those long fasts were very good in terms of my mindfulness and my awareness. And what I have learned is it is much harder to fast if you're a carbohydrate eater. If you're on a low-carb diet fasting, you probably won't even notice it. Because if you're eating healthy fats in a reasonable amount every day, you're not actually very hungry. And so, those 24-hour fasts, I don't really notice them. I begin to notice a fast in the morning of the second day. So, when I'm about 36 hours and I've slept through 2 nights without food, then I do begin to get a little bit growly, a little bit hungry. But again, my max right now, because of my age, is about 48 hours. So I'll skip one night's dinner and then go to the second night's dinner. But if you're going to fast, you start by eating dinner and then you start the fast after dinner. And I always give myself an out. So if I don't feel good, I stop the fast. If I get lightheaded, I stop the fast. You're not supposed to suffer that much. But it is a nice reset for the body, and it's also a really nice reset for the mind and the mindfulness. Fluffy books. I'm now on An Extravagant Duplicity by Lynn Messina, which is the latest in the Beatrice Hyde Clare series. And she's doing some very good interweaving of plot and character with her other new series, the Verity Lark series. Netflix. I was binging Seinfeld. I haven't really watched it in a few days, but it was fun. Nothing much else is happening there for me. Something I really like, Tanis Gray, you evil monster. You may remember Tanis Gray. She has done these wonderful books for basically fans of knitting projects. So she has covered 2 books, Knitting Magic and Knitting Magic 2 for Harry Potter. She has an insanely beautiful book for Disney. Well, now she's come out with The Fellowship of the Knits, and it's Lord of the Rings, the unofficial knitting book. It is not out yet. I am struggling not to pre-order it. I probably will on my next paycheck. These books are beautifully done. I have to say, first of all, the instructions are great. Tanis Gray is great. She also uses some of my other favorite people like Megan Regan, who does outrageously good Fair Isle yoke sweaters with fangirl type designs. The photography is excellent and the standard of the pattern is great. So Tanis Gray, you are someone I really like, and your next book, even though I haven't got it in my sweaty little paws yet, it's something I really like too. I cannot wait to get my hands on The Fellowship of the Knits. You can order it on Amazon. If you really squint, you can see that that's an Amazon page I put in as an illustration. Put a lid on it. No new tea tastings this week, but I am enjoying all my herbal blends as iced teas, and our weather has been going back and forth between warm and cold. In the meantime, I am having a great time with those spinach wraps that I got from Low Carb Norma. This is so easy. 3 eggs, a generous handful of spinach, and I mean very generous. She uses relatively little compared to me. I like a lot of spinach in this. Do not forget to season this. So you put your eggs and your spinach, and before you close the blender, you want to put in salt and pepper and any other seasoning you want. Stuffings, heat them up. That has been my biggest mistake, that when you do a crepe like this, the minute you get it out of the pan, it cools really rapidly because it's so thin. So you want to put warm stuffings in this nice savory crepe. I have heated up leftover tri-tip steak that I shredded. I have put roast chicken in it. I seem to perennially put shredded cheese. I like Trader Joe's Exceptional Cheddar this way, but also shredded Swiss. And sour cream and salsa, because that, my friends, is how I rock and roll. I tried her coconut flour recipe, which I believe is a 1/4 cup coconut flour, a 1/2 cup water, I think a pinch of salt, and a tablespoon of psyllium husk. It didn't work for me. It was too thick in the blender. I struggled to thin it out. So first thing is, don't blend it. You've just got to hand whisk it. But also, that water got sucked right up by the psyllium and the coconut flour. And, well, I did manage to get a crepe. It came out looking like cat yak. So it tasted okay. But again, I didn't season it, and I may have to experiment more with it. It would fall in the category of a dessert crepe or a dessert pancake. Didn't work for me very well, but we may go back to it. On to the blather. Well, I went to Deaf Nation in Pasadena at the convention center. I had a blast, which I certainly wasn't looking to have. So I drove down Saturday morning, and I got there fairly late because I decided to take it nice and easy. Saturday morning, I took the day off from work. And you can see a picture of me in the show notes when I first went in. I'm standing in front of all the display floor, and I'm looking excited. And I thought, well, this is going to be very scary. I mean, this is the real thing. Everybody's going to be deaf. Okay, so I get to the hotel. On my way in, there's a pair of lines leading into the parking garage with cars. They're coming in from different directions. They had to merge. So I'm face to face with this other car. We're about to merge. The driver signals to go ahead with his hand. So I sign, thank you. The passenger goes insane and starts wildly signing back and jumping up and down. I couldn't be happier to drive away. I went into a blind panic. But I parked my car, and I was parking over by the Sheraton lot where they went into the regular Pasadena Convention Center area. So that was good. I escaped them. So I go up to the desk in the hotel to check in. And there's a man and a woman behind the desk. And he says to her, "Oh my God, does she look like she's deaf to you?" Looking at me. And I started laughing and said, "No, I'm not deaf." And I said, "Let me guess. They didn't train you in any way to communicate with deaf customers." And they both nodded. Well, even as we spoke, a deaf couple walked by behind me. And the wife verbalizes out loud, "Where's the front door?" And you could tell by the way she speaks that she's deaf. So I turned around and I used sign, and I just gave very quick and easy directions. And the man said, "No, not the elevator, the front door." Out loud, he verbalized it. And so I signed, "Not the elevator, the front door," and pointed. So off they went. I turn around. The two people behind the counter have been joined by a third man, and they are all standing there with their mouths hanging open. And I said, "You're having a scary day, aren't you? Because you don't know how to talk to people, and you have deaf people in the hotel tonight." And they all nodded in unison. So I said, "Okay." The woman said, "I know how to say thank you." She did a salute. She did not do thank you. "But that's all." And I said, "That's not thank you." So I said, "Okay, I'm just going to show you really easy." So I showed them thank you. And I showed them how to do directions, pointing with two hands, and how to show around the corner, which was where the door was, and how to say door around the corner, and then how to say elevator straight down there, that way. I mean, very, very simple. It probably even sounds harder than it was. So the third man says to me, "How do you say you're welcome, though, if they're saying thank you to me?" So I showed him that, and he had a mask on. And I said, "You have to take off the mask." And he said, "Why?" And I said, "Well, it's about your face." And I said, "What you have to get with ASL is your face matters a lot." So I said, if you want to say you're welcome, it's really just this kind of right-on sort of gesture where you spread your fingers out, you put your palm parallel to your chest, and you wave your hand up and down from the wrist in front of your chest, parallel to your chest. And I said, that could mean, "Oh, wow, you're welcome," if you have a big smile on your face. But on the other hand, if someone tells you something a little gross and you look really horrified and you wave your hand, you're basically saying, "Oh man, twisted, don't do that again." And they all laughed. And so they're all doing big facial features. And I said, good. So of course, my swollen head, right? I know, I have enough ego for any 5 people as it is, but now I'm training the world how to speak ASL with my limited knowledge. But it was a great experience because it really brought home to me, most hearing people don't need a lot of ASL, but it would help if they had the minimum. Like very, very simple stuff like directions and yes and no and thank you, you're welcome. Or can I help you, which I showed them, which is very easy. Can I help you? And so that really brought it home. You don't need a lot of this stuff. Just a little bit to get going, to help people and to be functional enough to say, "Let me write that down," which is very easy to say. The really good news was this gave me the confidence to just turn around and walk into the exhibit hall where they were having the show. And it was great. It was a really great experience. I talked to a lot of people. I just began to say, excuse me, in various ways, or sorry, are you okay? Did I push you? Things like that. I started experimenting with just talking like a normal human, except using ASL instead of my mouth. And people talked back, and I probably didn't understand 2/3 of what was said to me. But I was also very warmed by the fact they all would have figured out I could hear. And a few times, though, I did sign. I signed badly. I'm hearing. I'm sorry. And they would say, no, no problem, no problem. And it was very charming because at the end of it, after 2 hours there, I gave myself an award. I gave myself a little necklace with a resin hand that has blue and pink flowers in it, my favorite things. And it's making the I love you sign. And in a sense, I'm a little scared to wear it because it's like saying, hey, you can talk to me if you need to sign. And I don't feel I'm ready for that. But I felt like I deserve some symbol of myself as functioning in sign. That was my little reward for myself. I also bought a book, Signing Made Easy. Every little bit helps. And the book vendor, I apologized to him. I said I don't sign well when he did the price. And he just showed it to me on his calculator. But he made a point of running out of the stall after me and stopping me and thanking me and fist bumping me, which is very deaf on deaf, that deaf people don't usually fist bump hearing people. And I was so touched because what it really was a gesture of, hey, hearing person, thank you for trying. Thank you for trying to learn. Thank you for trying to talk to me in my own language. And I was very warmed by that. It reminded me of being in Italy. In Italy, when I was there in the 80s, I speak really rotten Italian. It didn't matter. If you even tried, the Italians would go out of their way to help you. And that's what the deaf people were like. So I had a wonderful experience. I made a few new friends. I talked to somebody about having a transcript made for this podcast. I met a woman who wants to teach the elderly to sign and wants to introduce training for simple signing into nursing facilities because people who are post-stroke and lose the ability to speak may do well if we help them to sign simple needs. So I made a connection there. I really liked her. And then I met one of my classmates, someone who I've always thought of as angry and resentful towards the rest of us, and she was warm and fuzzy and friendly, and we had a great time. Afterwards, I took myself to an early dinner at the Yard House. You can see my dinner there. Believe it or not, this was a cheap dinner. It was a small Cobb salad, and then also a tuna, what to call this? It was sort of a mold of ahi tuna sashimi with avocado and cilantro and hot sauce and edamame, and it was good. And of course, the requisite Diet Cokes. Also, in that cluster of pictures, next to that one, next to the picture of the dinner at the Yard House, you will see a picture of the Central Intelligence Agency's desk at Deaf Nation. I don't even know what they were doing there. That's the last thing I expected was to walk into a deaf expo and the first thing you see is the CIA. However, above that in the pictures, you can see me with two very attractive women. The first picture where we're in front of Senior Sign 2, that is Deanne Crosby, who is the person who's interested in helping post-stroke victims and hard of hearing seniors learn to sign. And she's writing books, and she and I made a good connection. And then in the picture next to it, you can see me and my classmate. And we're both smiling and having a great time. And so it was really, really cool. I am so glad I went to Deaf Nation. I had a very slow drive back, and I ran a few errands on the way home, and it was really, really pleasant. So that was Saturday and Sunday. Today, in the pup date, I took Captain back to the vet. She's on steroids. Her nose is healing. The vet is very, very happy. They left me in the parking lot for 90 minutes, an hour late before they actually saw me for my appointment. So the vet and I will be exchanging photos of her nose in a month or so. But it went pretty well. The vet is crazy over her. And Captain, who gets so nervous she vomits in the car when we go to the vets, sucked up to everybody and is doing better. The Hubs and the beloved son stayed home because the beloved son was working on his AP calculus exam, which he took today, and he seems to feel he did very well on it. But you can see a picture. I love this. I was in the hotel in Pasadena, and I heard action at my Ring video doorbell on my watch. And so I looked up the camera from my iPad, and you can see the picture from my iPad of looking out the camera to my front corrals across the front patio. If you see those hills in the background on the other side of them, that's where I was when I took this picture through my iPad. Tech is cool. My son heard the Ring doorbell activate, so he came running up and actually chatted with me while he was at home on the farm and I was down in Pasadena. On to the calendar, the Evolution of Psychotherapy Conference. It's coming up in Anaheim, December 12th through 17th, 2023. If you're in that area and you want to touch base during that time, give me a heads up. Minerva gets the last word, and she would tell you, stay crafty. I put this picture in last week, but I still think it's so funny. She's lying on the pattern, the sewing pattern, before I cut out the pieces. And today, she promptly laid down on the fabrics when I put them on the floor to cut out my last two skirts. But the last few weeks, as I said last week, have been kind of a craft explosion for me. Then I'm sewing again. I'm working on some quilting project that I'll get to later when I get more serious about it. But I'm making the skirts for myself, and I really like them. I can't believe how nicely that first skirt came out and how absolutely comfortable and perfectly fitted it is. I can't wait to wear it tomorrow for work. In the meantime, of course, suddenly I'm making chatelaines with chains, and that's really cool. I don't think I'm going to do much in the way of jewelry beyond that, but I think I may make a few chatelaines and just post them on the Etsy store. And I'm really excited. And I have a new book, as I think I mentioned, The Ultimate Guide to Selling on Etsy by Noelle Ely and Jean Allen. So hopefully I will review that in a future episode. But it has been so exciting and so fun to just expand my craft work this week. And I know I've got the Lady Eleanor and the Pennsylvania Dutch embroidery. I have old projects that need to be finished. Was that Jasmine Knitmore I just heard laughing in the ethos about having millions of UFOs? Yeah, I'll get you for this. But no, all kidding aside, I'm having such a great time with this, and it's easy stuff. I'm not doing anything hard. Gigi Knitmore texted me today talking about working on a pair of pants and having some struggles and how they'll be putting that on their next episode. And I felt really guilty because I keep saying how easy sewing is, because it is. I mean, everybody should sew. You really should. You should learn the basics. But you can get pretty sophisticated, and that's Gigi's level. You know, Gigi makes her own patterns, has done really exquisite tailoring work. She's into finishing. She's way ahead of me. And I plan to never catch up with her, frankly, because I'm just so happy with the simple stuff. These little elastic waisted skirts. I'm looking at making shorts. I mean, why not? If it all fits, why not? Why not make yourself the easy stuff? I made myself chambray shorts years ago, and the waistband wore through where the elastic was rubbing it. And I made myself pajama bottoms. And, you know, I've got a whole lot of pajama bottoms that are kind of an awkward fit. They're sort of men's, and I bought them at, I think, Costco on the cheap or something. And so, again, I'm thinking, well, if I get the urge, flannel shorts, flannel pajama bottoms. In fact, I have so much flannel left over from these projects that may not be all that surprising if I end up making some pull-on flannel shorts. The point is, and I guess I looked at patterns, the point is, this is all so easy, but it also has really enlivened my world in the last 2 weeks, going back into sewing and then just flinging myself into the, for lack of a better name, chain craft. So Minerva wants you to know that her human is having a really exciting couple weeks by just staying crafty, and you should too. The COVID pandemic officially ends in the United States on May 11th. This is May 8th. I am waiting to see the fallout, including whether or not I will be expected to return to my office instead of working from home. I doubt it, that our boss is concerned that the insurance companies will want us to, but right now we're in competition with these online groups like Be Healthy, various other groups, who want to hire people like me and let us work from home and will give us the support we need. So I'm thinking it would be unwise for anybody to make us go back into the office. At the same time, it's better for my health to be home, frankly, because I'm not getting exposed to all the illnesses, although I still spent some weeks this winter being sick. And it's much better on our budget for me not to be driving out there every day. And I have patients who are housebound, and I'm able to see them really easily. So I'm hoping there will be no change. But I noticed this week people aren't masking. There's very, very few masks out there this week. So it looks like I'm so gobsmacked to be saying this, but it looks like we're calling the pandemic over here in the States. Now, what will happen in the winter? That should be interesting. We will see. It really remains to be seen. Also, the CDC just announced they have a new vaccine for RSV. Yeah, I'll be getting it because I believe that's what I had this past winter. Although my doctor couldn't get interested enough to give me an opinion or even really examine me. But I was sick for so long, twice. So I'm looking forward to that. But in the meantime, all I can tell you is, okay, remember what we've learned. Wash your hands. In a crowd, you might consider a mask, even if it's a sort of low-level mask. Keep your distance. Get your vaccines up to date. And most of all, remember, we are a community. When we take care of each other, that will be a means of taking care of ourselves in the most expansive and broad-based way. Having said that, everybody, thank you so much for listening. Stay safe, take care of each other, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye. So we have come to the end of another episode of Cognitive. Please do not use this podcast to diagnose yourself. If you think you are having a mental health problem, please contact a licensed mental health professional. Show notes for these episodes can be found at cognitivepodcast, all one word, .blogspot.com. Episodes can be found at iTunes under the name Cognitive Podcast, but also can be found posted next to the show notes on the Blogspot page. Thank you so much for listening. Everybody, stay safe, take care of each other, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.